Cool, cool, cool. Have I just less sound? No, I haven't. No. Right. Cool. Hello and welcome to the Pelgrane Press Pelgrane Press panel. I'm Gareth Hanrahan. Unfortunately, Cat Tobin has contracted some alarmingly Cthulhuoid plague at the Kraken, so she's unable to attend. And as I'm a writer, I know next to nothing, but I shall babble away for a few minutes about what's new and what's coming up from Pelgrane Press. I have a convenient list of things in progress here, and I'll jump right in with the release, finally, of the Yellow King role-playing game by Robin D. Laws, which consists of 4 lovely books in a elegant slipcase. There's basically, it's a game based on the works of Robert W. Chambers, set in the universe corrupted by the presence of the malign play, The Yellow King. And your characters move through 4 different settings. There's Paris, the wars of the 1940s in this alternate universe. Aftermath, we are playing in the aftermath of the fall of the Castaigne regime in an alternate present. And finally, This Is Normal Now, which is set in pretty much our world right now, as the Yellow King begins to creep into that reality. That was our major Kickstarter project of the last couple of years and has been slowly creeping out into existence, infiltrating our reality, despite many, many attempts to stop it, mainly involving printers and delays with them. Also associated with the Yellow King, and also at the same time, there's Robin's novel, The Missing and the Lost, which is set in the Aftermath setting. And the thoroughly lovely artifact that is Absinthe in Carcosa, which is a book of handouts and background information for the Paris setting, with layout by the wonderful Dale Englehart, who did the Hawkins papers. And it is a very pretty thing indeed. Sorry, one moment while I click on the 10 trillion windows that are lurking around here. Right, also in the mix at the moment, Mutant City Blues 2nd edition is currently being indexed, apparently. Mutant City Blues is a gumshoe-based game where you're playing superpowered cops investigating mysteries, solving cases. The 2nd edition switches to a version of gumshoe that was first used in the Yellow King, which uses pushes instead of spends, which, if you're deep into gumshoe, I can explain the difference, but it's slightly simpler for new players. And also tweaks, updates the settings slightly. It's very sort of polish as opposed to a rewrite addition to a quick update. Also nearly out is Even Death May Die, which is a supplement for Cthulhu Confidential, the one-on-one game of like a single character against the mythos. That compiles the 3 adventures for each of our pre-generated characters, Dex, Viv, and Langston. It is a giant beast of 9 long Cthulhu Confidential adventures, and that is currently being copy edited and should be out along with Mutant City Blues early next year. Slightly further down the pipeline, there is the Borellus Connection, which is a campaign for the Fall of Delta Green, which is our game of based on Arc Dream Publishing's Delta Green property, The Folded Green is set in the 1960s, so basically it's government spies versus the mythos. The Borderless Connection is a very, very large campaign for that game, basically following the heroin trail from the Far East and like Vietnam and Laos, across the world, all the way to the eastern seaboard of the United States. It was outlined by Ken Hite and written by me, by which I mean Ken wrote this detailed and enthusiastic outline, and I somehow put his crazed ideas into the form of an actual adventure, which was, as always, an experience. That is written. It's with Arc Dream for approval, and I spent a chunk of last month cutting it down so it could actually, fit within physical bonds of matter, because it went slightly over long. Also working on coming. Where are we? We're hoping to have Borderless out sometime in the earliest part of next year, i.e. before Gen Con. Also out before Gen Con is the 13th Age Book of the Underworld, which is another book by me. It's basically adventures in the underworld in 13th Age, which was sort of given away by the title there. You're playing, it's like, Monsters of the Deeps, Lands Below, 3 different levels of the underworld, and lots of fun down there. Also in the pipeline for 13th Age, there is a new start level adventure by the wonderful Wade Rocket called The Crown of Axis. There is a book of icon followers, which Rob is developing, which is basically going to be like, connections based on the various icons. I've just started in on Dragons of the Pyre, which is another 13th Age campaign, which is not going to be out for some time because I've just started writing it, and it's going to take me well into next year to actually get it finished, because it's going to be a 10-level campaign. But there'll be more on that in days to come, or months to come, to be honest. And Swords of the Serpentine, which is Kevin Culp's epic gumshoe fantasy book, is currently in post playtest editing, and we should have that out for Gen Con, or at least that's the plan. And the other thing is Born Robot, which is a sort of it's by Kate Bullock and Robin Laws. It's a science fiction gumshoe game, previously known as Robot Dreams. It's sort of, as far as I understand, light-hearted and fantastical and philosophical. But I have not seen that, as it is still being written. And I guess at this point, it would be time to take a couple of questions. I shall reveal more stuff later on. So if there are questions out there, yes, I've been reminded to punch the book in the face. Robin and Cat and people were at the Kraken when the Yellow King books finally came out. So I actually got my copy before either of them had seen the finished version. So I unboxed it and had one of my 6-year-olds help me unboxing it, but he got slightly enthusiastic and decided that the way to show off a book was to punch it in the face. However, I can prove that the binding is sturdy, the cover largely undamaged by an enthusiastic 6-year-old hammering it in the face.
Looks like Frank is typing something. I don't know.
Cool.
Do you want to give more detail about some of these? It went pretty quick.
I'm being prompted for more detail on things by voices in my ear or in my head. I'm not quite sure. I shall roll a d12 and pick which one I should give more detail on. This is seat of your pants random panel giving. As I said, Cat is sick. Thought I would just be here for vague moral support and going yay in the corner as opposed to doing the whole thing. She knows far more about all this because she runs the company. I'm really write stuff. Number 2, Absinthe and Carcosa. Let us discuss more of the glories of Absinthe and Carcosa. I feel faintly like this is like not telesales, but late night shopping. But Absinthe and Carcosa is a lovely book here, as modeled by our lovely assistant me. It consists basically of 3 genuine real histories on 1895 Paris that have been edited together, recombined, collaged, and annotated in the margins. It could be handed to your players as an actual handout in the game world, as it's written by this American art student who has come under the malign influence of that dread play. It's there. Sword and Serpentine is a gumshoe fantasy game set in this city called Eversink, which is, as the name suggests, slowly sinking into the mud. So we've got multiple levels of previous cities below it. It is by Kevin Culp and Emily Dresden-Hornber, who are both wonderful people. It's sort of swords and sorcery-esque take on Gumshoe. My big exposure to it was one playtest game at Gen Con, where I was playing some form of malign sorcerer, which was great fun, although we were very, very tired at being Gen Con. It is fast playing, it is Gumshoe Fantasy, and it will be out for next Gen Con. And knowing Kevin's books, like Time Watch, it shall be a gigantic heavy beast. I'm also being asked if there's anything else coming for the Yellow King. Yes, there is. There are 2 books in progress, I believe. 2. Yes, there is a Yellow King bestiary, that's brackets not final title according to the spreadsheet, which shall be officially announced at Dragon Meet in December, but I am letting it slip now because I was told to let it slip, so I'm not quite sure what the difference between an official announcement and a slip is. Other than this is like slightly scandalous. No, the Yellow King bestiary is going to be a giant book, respectable book of monsters for all 4 settings of the Yellow King. That's Paris, the Wars, Aftermath, and This Is Normal Now. It's being developed by Robin D. Laws. Also in progress, the Yellow King is a book of magic, which will include more spells and weirdness for each of the 4 settings and an adventure in each of the 4. And that is being worked on now. They're probably not going to be out until late next year. I assume that's a typo in the spreadsheet that was given, or possibly the second one, the Book of Magic, will be out sometime in the next millennium. But that's probably a typo. I've just been thinking, how do you mix Gumshoe and Murder Hobos? You have several options. Mechanically, you could pick up Lore Finder, which was a OGL version of Gumshoe, which basically plugged the core concept of Gumshoe into D20. More generally, the core conceit of Gumshoe is that it's always more fun to find the information, that players should never be left without a clear path to follow, that basically that finding the adventure should never rely on either a lucky roll or the players reading the GM's mind. So if I was going to mix Gumshoe and Murder Hobos, you basically want to have a treasure and trouble finding ability that the players could rely on, so they would know in which direction the GM has actually prepared stuff for them to murder and rob, and which directions will lead them going off the map into blank hexes where the GM has nothing prepared. But I'm not sure if my players sought murder hoboness, I would gumshoe would not be my first thought, certainly. Actually, now the 13th Age, given its emphasis on heroism and glorious connections to the world, but I'm sure players can turn anything into murder hoboness. And to be fair, Trail of Cthulhu does have the hobo career, so you could, easily have a group of literally murderous hobos, but to be murdering with good reason, because they're murdering secret cultists. So that could be fun. I shall roll my d12 again and expound on a different product that's upcoming from Pelgrane Press. Number 7. The Borellus Collection. Yay, I can actually talk about that with some level of authority. The Borellus Collection, and again, this is all pre-approval by Arcdream, so I may be told to rewrite some of this at some point. But it consists of either 8 or 10 adventures taking place across the world. So you go over the course of the campaign, so you're following our planned course, which you may not be. You go from two adventures in the Golden Triangle around Vietnam. You've got an adventure that takes you from Vietnam to the United States via airports along the way. Basically, it's one long adventure set on a transatlantic flight, and because there weren't direct flights back then, so there's a lot of island hopping and visits to Easter Island and other fun places, and the ability to get murdered in customs in Buenos Aires. Then the action shifts to Turkey, Italy, Germany, and on to Marseille. And then the finale of the campaign takes place somewhere else. It's based heavily on certain H.P. Lovecraft stories mixed with the heroin trade. Those who have read certain H.P. Lovecraft stories can guess a lot of the intent, certainly from the title, if you know certain famous quotations that Lovecraft used. And yes, it was Ken generated this epically detailed outline, so we basically followed the same method we used for doing the Zosny Quartet back in the day, where he basically gave me a vague idea of the story and dumped 10,000 pages of research on me, and it was my duty to sort of follow him along, Igor to his Frankenstein, and plug all the bits together. It's an alarming comparison, but a relatively accurate one. It was fantastic fun to write. Because there's so many different adventures, you get to play with all different styles of mythos fighting in the 1960s. There's sort of high octane gunfights. There is lots of investigation. There's lots of genuine historical characters who, almost all of whom are terrible, terrible people. Just really into some of the figures who were involved in SPRs in the 60s. They're disgusting, ghastly people. Unfortunately, you get to shoot many of them. There are everything from ancient Egyptian gods to lots and lots of French gangsters. And it should be great fun once it comes out, but it is going to be a very, very large book. It's probably going to be as big as the folded green core itself, if not slightly heavier. And once again, Cat will murder me for writing a too long book, which she then has to turn into an actual physical thing. But then again, she is sick and lying in bed somewhere in Bantry, and she can't stop me babbling. And if she wanted to correct me, she could have come to the panel, but she's sick. Are there any other questions? Or I shall roll the d12 again. And conveniently, I've also rolled on another book of mine, the Book of the Underworld. 30th Age has. Oh, I'm being good to loop back to Borellis. How deadly are we making Borellis connection? Not so you have reputation. Fall Delta Green is quite literally a lethal system in that there's weapons have a lethality rating, which so certain weapons can just kill you stone dead. Some of the adventures are quite relatively safe. I can think of you're likely to die at Adventure 3 unless you really try hard or say the wrong things near the end. But you should get close to the end of it. The other ones, part of the genius of Delta Green is that it creates a sort of structure for Cthulhu gaming where replacement player characters can be added in. You could be fresh replacement Delta Green agents. It's not super deadly, but there's a lot of very nasty people who carry guns or shotguns. Not shotguns, you liveliest awfulness with them. So yeah, I would be on your guard, and I would have a couple of spare player characters waiting in the wings, certainly. Right, I was babbling about Book of the Underworld again. 30th Age has the Underworld, which is this semi-mythic realm beneath the ground. How we're doing this is how I wrote it anyway. It's currently being developed by J.M. Foggy, so he may have changed much of it, but it is going to have 3 levels of the Underworld, with lots and lots of basically locations and factions in there. There's a couple of new Underworld races, a couple of new Underworld spells, rules for traveling and navigating the Underworld to basically make journeys there a bit more significant. Rules are sort of semi-lifted from Work on the One Ring, but that's beside the point. And yeah, it was an opportunity to play with a slightly sort of darker, more surreal version of 30th Age, because the Underworld is supposed to be a dark and weird place. And I got to basically do my favorite thing, which is making new and weird monsters and new and weird policies for players to mess around. There's lots of drow stuff in there, lots of the dwarf stuff. If you want to go and reclaim the ancient dwarven kingdom, that's an option. And there are basically multiple takes on possible world-ending things. The upper level of the Underworld is adventurer tier-ish. Middle level is champion tier. And the deep Underworld is obviously epic tier. So you can basically tailor your player's experience to their level while leaving up the option of them falling down a hole into the levels of horrible death. Let's do a quick question loop. I'm also slightly hypnotized by the lag between the live video and the YouTube video, which is a couple of seconds long, so I can hypnotize myself by traveling back in time by about 2 minutes. Yay. I should roll my d12 again. Number 5. Haha. Mutant Blue 2nd edition. The other addition to this, in addition to basically polishing up the rules and adding a sort of stress system to better reflect gritty cop dramas where the protagonists have all sorts of personal issues in addition to mystery to solve, is we've added in a chapter on private detectives. So if you want to use the system to play Jessica Jones or Alias or anything on that lines, there is extra support in there. There's a new starter adventure in there, which we played either from the perspective of cops or private detectives, and we're going to update and re-release some of the earlier Mutant Blues adventures, updated to the slightly tweaked system. And yeah, I mean, Moon Sea Blues is not one of Pelgrane's biggest selling books, but it's one of our personal favorites. There isn't that many other cop-based games out there in the market, and it's a lovely little system. For a far, far more accurate and less awkward palsy Pelgrane panel, I would recommend coming along, which we'll be doing a panel at Dragonmeet in London in December, when we should have most of the Pelgranistas there, and they will be able to talk with authority. Yes, Moon Sea Blues should be out early next year. The spreadsheet is telling me the PDF to pre-order should be out fairly soon. The book should be out to pre-orders in January 2020 and should be hitting retail in February 2020. I like the certainty this spreadsheet offers me. It lets me say this authoritatively, but also it has great confidence in the future. Like I said, it's like, hoping to have playtest ready versions in early 2020 for other books, like reaching shops in Q4 2020. I love the confidence saying that the world will still be there this time next year. Sorry, I've spent far too much time on Twitter reading politics stuff. Anyway, this is a tangent, but working without a net here. I should roll D12 again. This time I'm going to roll my Fibonacci dice. So I'm going to talk about an entirely fictional product. 3. No, that's not fiction at all. That is a very bad word, absinthe and Carcosa. Although it is very nice. I shall instead talk about The Missing and the Lost, which I had here in my mortal hands not a moment ago. Here it is. That is Robin's novel set in the Aftermath universe from the perspective of a repairman of the government lethal chambers, which are the suicide machines in the Yellow King setting. I actually may as well babble about for a few minutes about the Yellow King setting. The Yellow King is, or The King in Yellow was a book by Robert W. Chambers about this malign, or which actually saying it's about this malign play is per exaggeration. A book in which a malign play is tangentially mentioned several times, with the implication that its existence is responsible for much of the weirdness in those stories. And Robin has expanded that into a whole Yellow King mythos. He is not the first person to do this. There's the Hastur mythos, which is in Delta Green by John Scott Tynes, but this is Robin's own take on it. And in the campaign, you start off playing Bohemian American artists in Paris in 1895, stumbling around drinking absinthe and talking about bad poetry, and you slowly become aware that there is this malign play out there. And how mechanically how it works is each player comes up with their juiced peculiar thing, which is basically it's sort of reminiscent of the One Unique Thing in 30th Age, where the players sort of throw out strange ideas and the GM integrates them into the adventure. Like I'm running a Yellow King game at the moment, and we have among the juiced peculiar things that have been thrown at me include one player who ran into the Inconnu of the Seine, who is this famous suicide in France, this drowned girl. We have another guy who went to bed with a man, and the next morning the man turned to a woman, and he's very confused by that. We have another guy whose cat gave birth to what he described as a congealed mess of kitten, which he threw in the river, and he is now apparently being tormented by the Carcosan alley cat which fathered this congealed mess. And the players are being drawn into this elaborate mystery involving alternate realities, time travel, and secret cults. And we're only on session 3, and they have not only the power setting to get through, but the other 3 alternate settings of the Yellow King. And as the play's influence radiates and echoes through time, your Parisian characters switch over to the Wars, which is set in this alternate version of World War II, full of weird mythos technology and weird mythos influence. And your new characters aren't the same people as they were in Paris, but there's a sort of emotional echo or resonance to them. As if you're playing the architect in Paris, you're playing the artillerist in the war setting and so forth. So basically, your characters sort of don't quite continue on, but sort of echo on. And then again into the ultra present of Aftermath, where you're playing after the fall of the tyrannical Castaigne regime in this alternate America. And basically it's sort of like Hamilton meets Cthulhu as you try and build a new version of the United States while dealing with the trauma of having fought this alien mythos force and mostly overthrown it. And then This Is Normal Now involves reality leaking into a alter take on our world. And I'm really looking forward to playing it. And it is very good and very shiny and comes in a cool slipcase that becomes, through Eldritch Sorcery, a GM screen. Be asked about the one-to-one titles. Also recently out from Pelgrane was Let's Play Occasion Solo Ops, which is a one-to-one version of the Let's Play Agent setting. So basically, you're playing a lone vampire hunter out against the vampire conspiracy. Our pre-gen character in that is Layla Khan, this ex-MI6 agent who spent several years in the thrall of the vampires, has now basically broken free, but her memory has been Swiss cheesed by the trauma of this. So it's basically very much Jason Bourne versus Dracula in that you've lost much of your memory. You can recall the occasional useful tidbit, and you're fighting for your life as vampires try and pursue you to either silence you or take you back under their control. More one-to-one stuff is coming. I recently wrote up a sort of how-to guide for one-to-one writers, which is going to be given out as sort of a sample. I'm going to try and do a line of shorter one-to-one releases. There's a sample adventure there in a sort of the Magicians / Harry Potter-esque setting, where basically you're a dropout in a magical university, solving academic problems there. And you're you're forbidden to use magic, even though everyone else gets to throw spells around because you're entangled with the demon. And I have no idea if I should have either A, revealed that's existence, or B, when that's coming out, because it's not on the spreadsheet. But yes, more one-to-one will be produced at some point in the future. And for very up-to-date stuff on Pelgrane Press, there's our monthly newsletter, C-Page XX, on pelgranepress.com, where there is a regular update on stuff going on, tidbits of stuff in development, and articles by Ken and Robin and myself and other authors on stuff we're working on, or just random thoughts on writing, or often in my case, bits I've had to cut from existing manuscripts that I can rework. For example, there will be a long series of chunks cut from the Burlesque Connection. As I said, it went slightly over long. That's partly because Ken gives very, very detailed outlines with lots of ideas, and putting them all in was excessive. But in my defense, I wrote like 7 of the 8 adventures, or 9 of the 10, however many there are, and he wrote one of them. And his one was 3 times longer than anything else. So if Ken had written the whole thing, it would have collapsed the universe by sheer length, because it would have been bigger than a YouTube window can hold. So yes, but many of the cut bits will show up as articles. A couple have already gone up, and none of that glorious goodness will be lost. Just won't be printed. I shall roll my Fibonacci dice again. No, 7. No, 1. I don't know why I have a Fibonacci D12. What's fun? I've already babbled up Book of the Underworld again. I shall not do so again. You can just loop back to an earlier point of the show. Of course, also for other updates on Pelgrane Press stuff, you could tune in to the multi-war ring podcast, Ken and Robin Talk About Stuff, where Ken and Robin will regale you, and they're also more experienced at babbling online. And also there are 2 of them. Sometimes I really miss Kat showing up, because she could have said, "Be quiet, Gar," and talked authoritatively about other things in the pipeline. Whereas I am just a writer, and writers, for those unfamiliar with them, are basically kept in the dark and occasionally thrown scraps of meat and just expected to type things. And if I wasn't a writer, I would know about production schedules and stuff being worked on, as opposed to just what's in front of me. I've had to rack my brains to actually recall details of Book of the Underworld or Borealis, even though I wrote them, both of them in the last couple of months. As soon as one book is finished, one moves on. Yes, there is, as I'm being prompted here, an upcoming community content creation thing for Gumshoe coming drive through the DMs Guild and the other company-specific ones, such as the Keepers, whatever it is, for Call of Cthulhu. I do not know when that will launch. I believe the plan is to get some writers' guidelines and assets available first, and Pelgrane is still a very small company. We're sort of spinning up with some added people, like Sive and Jess and Becky, all of whom are fairly new recruits, but that is still part of the pipeline. That would be an excellent question for Kat if she was here, because she would know exactly when that's coming out, but she's not. So yes, as soon as there shall be at some point an official announcement in Page XX, which is the place to go for all things Pelgrane related, and far more informative than a slightly red-faced person babbling at you online. But then this is live. You get to throw questions at me, and I get to avoid or vamp or look embarrassed, which I'm very good at. Let's roll the dice again. 12. So the Serpentine, one thing I'm really looking forward to is Emily's involvement in that. I know that Eversink, the world in which, or the setting for Sword Serpentine, is this great commercial city. There's the main goddess there, is goddess of trade. And Emily did this fantastic series of articles for, I think, Gnome Stew, and her own blog, about dungeon economics, and basically the weird interactions of like monetary theory and magic, which sounds intensely boring when I say it, but she sort of spun these out into these fantastic plot threads about magician skills and like magical forgery and like what one could do with magic and money, and they were just absolutely dripping in adventure hooks, and heartily recommend anyone seeking them out as sort of like taster material for the sort of stuff that would be in Swords and Serpentine. I also know, it being a Kevin product, that it's going to be absurdly flexible. I know he's been like writing demo adventures for Gen Con, and in one you're like, street urchins, but like running penniless around the alleyways with like, sticks, and in other adventures, exactly the same system. You are like these wealthy and influential noble investigators with all the resources you can imagine. It's notable among Gumption games for having a sort of morale system. You can basically talk people to, not to death, but into agreeing with you. So there are multiple ways to approach many of the problems in there. And there is a magic system that involves sort of horrible things happening to you, and like sort of magical backlash, which is apparently great fun. As I said, I think my sorcerer may have turned into a frog or something, or eaten a frog. Frogs were definitely involved, and not in a good way. Other things that are long been in the pipeline at Pelgrane, which I don't have updates on. There are 2 Cthulhu campaigns that have been planned for a very long time and are in development, but have not yet come to fruition. There's the Poison Tree, which has been done by the lads over at Schoolfriends Jackson Elias. I'm not sure when that's going to be out. I know it's been in playtesting and editing or writing for a very, very, very long time, but they've been busy writing half of Chaosium's content, so I'm not sure when they're going to finally get Poison Tree out. And similarly, Steve Dempsey's book on English magic, which his name I'm suddenly forgetting, based on a Blake book. Yes, but anyway, that is in production, but going slowly, I fear. But will, I'm sure, be out at some point. What's it called again? No, I've lost my brain entirely. Yes, Fearful Symmetries. Thank you. I knew it was a quote. That will be at some point, but it is dependent on Steve's schedule. So we shall see when that finally comes into dreadful form. I love how the title for this is Pelgrim's Plans for the Coming Year. And many of these things will take far more than a year to actually come out. But come out they shall. Pelgrane is slow but methodical. Like a Pelgrane, in fact, which eats you in a slow but methodical fashion. Any other questions or comments or prompts from the other? I shall roll my Fibonacci dice again. Oops. 1. Where are we? That's with the Yellow King again. But it is so nice. I shall show it again. There are 2 slipcases. Look. With the mysterious sigil, which will haunt your dreams. Oh, as a health warning, like you've now seen the sigil and you've now seen the yellow sign, and it will track you down and destroy you, or at least bring you into a strange alternate reality in which you're a French art student. So I hope you like Absinthe. And then there's the other screen, which has useful tables on the inside, including investigative abilities for the 4 settings, and the revised combat system. This is Quick Shot Gumshoe, which is a very interesting little quirk on the regular combat system. But it's done as sort of collaborative combat in that if you have a group of 6-player characters all fighting the same monster, it's all done as one sort of group skill check, which makes sense because fighting monsters in Cthulhu-wide games is generally not the done thing or not a sensible thing to do. So a lot of the time it's basically rolled to see exactly what horrible fate befalls your characters, and do you manage to you pick which outcome you're going for. Do you want to merely escape the monster? Do you want to drive it away? Do you want to try and kill it? And they're all progressively more difficult, and then you roll to see what the cost is to you should you succeed and should you fail. But it's great for rapidly resolving combats in a very, very evocative fashion, because what happens to you when you fail a combat roll or don't pay the sufficient toll is you pick up these lovely problem cards, like, for example, picking one at random. The atavistic, where's my camera? The atavistic terror of an animal attack. And that explains how you will, what the cost is for being attacked by a wild animal in this case, and how you get rid of this problem. In this case, you discard by establishing your mastery over this type of creature. So, for example, if you have been attacked by, say, a mysterious wolf with glowing yellow fur, you will have picked up a phobia of wolves, which you can only get rid of by demonstrating that you no longer fear them. So basically, your damage is almost prompts and adventure hooks for the next session, which is a great way of lifting things out of the realm of mere numbers and giving players problems they have to deal with, because if you pick up we're still alive, all still good apparently. Yes, the one of the solutions is just for handling the cards if you don't want to print them all out. What we did in several Playtest games was everyone sent it to a Slack channel, and the GM would send you your cards in private message. I've actually been using WhatsApp to the same effect in my group, so the players have been getting literal distressing notifications on their phones saying you have just been clawed by a giant Carcosan cat, or you have gotten drunk with, was it Bibi La Puree, who was a bizarre figure, which it's Harbor-esque clown who was hanging around with Simplest Poets in 1895. One of the great things about the Paris book actually is that it contains a lengthy list of NPCs, as in real historical characters who were hanging around in Paris at this time, and they're all weird. One of weird. One of my player characters is a roommate of Henri Matisse, and it's probably going to get him killed in a session or two. Thus demonstrating how the Yellow King world is slowly deviating from our own. And it's also more of Robin's cunning ongoing plan to teach everyone in the gaming world about fine art, between that and his surrealist RPG. We've all become so much more art knowledgeable at Pelgrane. Well, I mean, Robin already wasn't. Ken knows everything, but the rest of us had to be educated. I'm disappointed with this dice. I mean, it goes from 1 to 144, but has so far only rolled actual numbers that are on the spreadsheet, and I've babbled about all those already. I know there are other Pelgrane things in the offing, but many of those are known only to Cat. So I have existed in a small stall with blinkers on, knowing only the book in front of me, knowing only the pages must be filled, and having vague inklings of other things happening, but they are beyond my ken, and also beyond Ken's ken. Ken squared. As David Cameron said, I'm condemning the UK to a 3 years of uncertainty and weirdness. I'm also amused that there are 2 notifications up here saying, 1, you're in the show, everyone can see and hear you, and then down below it, having issues. Yes, I am. There's something slightly confessional about all this. I shall roll the Fibonacci dice one last time. That's more like it. 144. I shall scroll down 144 entries on the spreadsheet and lie about an upcoming Pelgrane book. I shall now exclusively announce on this very chat that Pelgrane is going to be doing a gumshoe-based game about fish, inspired by our regular visits to the Ocean Air restaurant in Indianapolis, which is doing a sort of takeoff of Finding Nemo, where your investigative abilities include fish and more fish and crustaceans and crustacean lore and whatever, like, you know, whatever the crustacean forensics, antennae, plankton. Actually, I'm surprised no one has done a SpongeBob SquarePants role-playing game or similar thing, given the longevity of that product, or product, IP, whatever, cartoon thing. Because I remember watching that in college, and my kids are still watching it, and it's like, you know, they're new episodes. So yes, Pelgrane will do something fishy. And I shall add the spreadsheet for sometime post the fall of humanity. So, like, you know, 2025 or so. Actually, long ago there was work on a post-apocalyptic Pelgrane or gumshoe game called Raised by Will Hindmarch, so I'd love to actually see to finally come to fruition. But it's in the graveyard is the wrong word, but in the sort of, like, you know, the fecund, fetid pile of started but unfinished projects which get cannibalized and reworked and may eventually be brought to life, but not yet, O Lord. I'm being accused of joking. I never joke. I am utterly devoid of humor. I am unaware of irony and speak only with total conviction about what I am saying, and have never prevaricated or used humor as a deflection method ever. And I'm drawn once again to show off Absinthe Carcosa and the lovely handouts, which you note this time are currently confined to a printed page as opposed to the infamous but still very lovely Hawkins papers, which were another Pelgrane thing where they actually went to the trouble of making all the handouts, and that drove people slightly mad. But it was worth it, I swear. I'm amused the fact that there's another Kickstarter ongoing for by some other company for Dracula, where basically they're producing a sort of facsimile version of Dracula done as a, like, you know, bunch of letters and so forth. and they're charging a reasonable price for it, as opposed to the Pelgrane approach of massively undercharging based on the amount of work involved. And I will say this because Cat isn't here and therefore unable to murder me. Although she shall watch the recording of this at some point. Yes, Fish Police for Mutant City Blues. It could work. Crowd Fighters at the Sea. That was the thing. I mean, the sort of the beauty of Gumshoe is that it can be adapted to any setting that involves investigation and information handling. Actually, I have done some work on, but it's still very stages of a basically Gumshoe kids game. I've been running a lot of games for my 2 6-year-olds, and Gumshoe actually, I suspect, could be very good for a kids game because it lets you actually have a story, because they just sort of bounce around randomly and chase after the last thing that you mentioned. But with Gumshoe, you can use basically ways to sort of structure a story and go here is the clue that gets to the next scene. What ability do you to use this clue? You have a very, very short list of abilities, and they will be able to go, aha, because I have find fish. Who'll go find a fish, and that actually lets you plot out a story arc. And the Gumshoe basic general ability system, which is basically spend some points from your stat and roll dice, roll d6 and add the two together, is also basic maths. So we've been teaching them basic maths that way as well. That totally counts as parenting. Also teaching them to punch books, which is not an ideal parenting, but a useful survival skill, especially in this house, where books could fall you at any moment, as you can see from watching the video. Right, we're coming up on 57 minutes of me babbling frantically into a webcam. So if there are any final questions about what's coming up from Pelgrane Press, or suggestions on paying my therapy bill, and I shall also say that the great and glorious thing is that the Yellow King is finally out. It was much, much delayed, but none of it was our fault. Those who have backed our Kickstarter have read the updates where everything that could possibly go wrong with printing could go wrong, including one of the print people vanishing, and Simon finally tracking down the person they had the connection with, that they were dealing with at the printer, quit his job unexpectedly. And after several weeks later, Simon finally rings up the printer, gets through, and they go, "Oh, right, that's who owns this giant pile of books. We had no idea who owned the giant pile of books. They've been sitting in one office. They must be yours. You can have them." And then working out a way to get them to another printer, and then a third printer who could provide the magnets for the lovely slipcase. These remarkably strong magnets. There we are. Ta-da! But yes, there has been much stress and woe and wailing and cursing of the names of printers. But as I said, because I'm a writer and I know nothing, this was all happening above my pay grade, somewhere over that way. So yeah, that way is towards Bantry. Beyond you, O viewer, is the dreaming land of Bantry, where even now Cat is lying in her sick bed, but would normally be at her desk being stressed and shouting at me on Skype. But now she cannot, and I'm free to say what I wish. Mwah. Right, okay, in the absence of any further questions, I think we shall begin to bring this to an end. So thank you all very much for coming. For those who watch it later on YouTube, where it shall be up, this has been a strange historical artifact. Hopefully it has been entertaining and informative, although probably in that order. But yes, thank you very much. And if you want a far more coherent and enlightening and also multi-headed panel, we shall see you at Dragon Meet. And Thank you very much. I don't know how to shut this down because it's all one of our technical people, but at some